Who are you? What are you made of? Where are you going? What will you make of yourself? Sometimes the hardest questions are the ones you ask yourself. If you're lucky, your answers are easy to find. If you're smart, you'll start looking here at one of our 23 community colleges and more than 40 locations. To learn more, visit findyouranswer.com. Find your answer at Virginia's community colleges.
And good evening. We're doing it live right here. This is Frank Mottek, Mottek on Money, the 5 o'clock hour here in Los Angeles on 790 KABC, 5 nights a week for you, live on the air here on 790 KABC, streaming live online worldwide at KABC.com and the on-demand Mottek on Money podcast for you at KABC.com, Apple, iTunes, all your favorite podcast platforms, and on the socials too at Frank Mottek on X, formerly known as Twitter. Let's not forget about good old LinkedIn and, of course, Instagram. Well, stocks ended sharply lower today. Money coming off the table ahead of a big speech expected tomorrow by Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. He'll be speaking at the big economic forum, the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium, first thing tomorrow. The dollar strengthened a bit ahead of that big speech. Also, the NVIDIA earnings were very much in focus. Looks like the NVIDIA rally faded a bit today in a volatile session for NVIDIA as well as the other AI-related stocks. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of nearly 400 points. Biggest one-day point and percentage drop since March 22nd. The S&P 500 gave back 60, and the NASDAQ moved lower by 257 points. Well, big news from NVIDIA, as you first heard here last evening, with the earnings coming in after the closing bell. Shares rocketed higher after the opening bell here today, but subsequently faded as the broader market turned lower. It looks like NVIDIA shares ended around 471 and change after hitting above 502 in the early action. We did see some of the other AI-related names, shares of Palantir Technologies, Advanced Micro, and OpenAI investor Microsoft also erasing pre-market gains and moving lower. The bond market, of course, getting a lot of attention lately with those bond yields soaring, impacting, among other things, fixed-rate mortgage rates, which have hit 20-year highs recently. The yield in the 10-year note went higher again today to 4.23%. Retailers, of course, dealing with these flash mob robberies. The latest, Nordstrom, following a massive late-afternoon robbery of one of its stores this month here in California. Nordstrom executives said levels of theft have not been beyond what they expected. We're watching what's happening here with organized retail theft becoming more common on many of the earnings calls of the nation's biggest retailers. We'll discuss what's happening on that front tonight with the Honorable Steve Cooley, former Los Angeles County DA. He'll be joining me live later this hour to discuss. Of course, political and legal drama playing out this evening. Former President Trump turning himself in at Georgia's Fulton County Jail with this latest move and his numerous legal fights. I'll discuss that as well as the post-game show on that big debate last night. The first Republican primary presidential debate occurred last evening. I'll talk about it, and we're scheduled to talk about it with the Republican National Committeeman from California, SHAWN. But first, on the markets, the economy. Joining us live now, Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. By the way, the hot labor summer continues here in Hollywood, and we see Disney shares dropping today, down about 4% to finish, looks like a 9-year low here, Gabriel. We're watching that, of course. And give us your assessment of things here at the moment.
Well, Frank, we'll start with Disney. Yeah, you're right. It's a 9-year low, and some on Wall Street are advocating for a breakup of their many core assets, something that even Bob Iger, the CEO, mentioned last month. He hinted at it. Disney has some very valuable assets that we're all familiar with, and then some of the so-called linear networks, ESPN Plus, Hulu, Disney Plus, there's Hotstar. They could start spinning off these different assets, and the sum of the total, oddly, is oftentimes worth less than the individual assets. We see that in conglomerates all the time. So that's what's going on with Disney. Media in general has been pretty soft. Warner Brothers now talking about a CNN Plus. Clearly, news drives listener and viewer engagement. So that's the thinking. They're doing whatever they can to breathe some new life into the media stocks while these strikes continue.
Right, and Paramount Global, formerly CBS, also been under pressure. Another rough day for that name, and the list goes on.
Yes, it does. And all the while, we have the AI, artificial intelligence group, hitting a speed bump after a phenomenal run over the past certainly 7 or 8 months. It's not a bubble. There have been some 70 or so bubbles over the past 100 years. We're all familiar with the .com bubble, with the cryptocurrency situation. Housing's been in bubbles, but artificial intelligence, that's the real deal. And it's these chips that NVIDIA and AMD and ASML and so many other companies are making. They're key to this new media. And I think AI is probably part of the dialogue, certainly part of the narrative with regard to these strikes in Hollywood.
Certainly a big issue, AI, with the writers as well as the actors. And so NVIDIA had an interesting day following that earnings news, that basically hitting it out of the park and then getting above $500 today, but then pulling back to about 471, just a slight gain today, 0.1%. And the other AI names also saw a wild ride, and including some of the big players that have taken big positions in AI. OpenAI investor Microsoft, for example, also erasing the gains that we saw earlier and ended lower. And the so-called Magnificent Seven mega cap stocks also moved into the red. Amazon, Tesla, Apple, Google's parent company, Alphabet, and another one, another AI player with its Bard chatbot, Google is. So what about this AI rally, and where would you be placing your bets here at the moment?
You know, Frank, August historically is the worst month for the stock market, for all the averages. Maybe it has something to do with climate or the laid-back attitude summer brings. Could be humidity. We don't know. But we do know that human beings everywhere react to the weather. And so it is with our financial markets. So we're having a very soft August, not a big surprise. Also, there's this concern about where interest rates are going to go. We're all expecting to hear more hawkish news from Fed Chairman Powell. The theme this year at the Federal Reserve's Jackson Hole Conference, which is just getting underway, is structural shifts in the global economy. And the arguments for higher interest rates, I mean, they're pretty good. They're now pulling out some of the more arcane indicators like R star. R star is a term describing the real interest rate where demand for savings and investment in the economy is at an equilibrium. So that there's no inflation, there's just supply-demand equilibrium, and that would put interest rates maybe right about where they are. But at the same time, business is booming and labor's tight. So we'll see what Powell has to say tomorrow.
Absolutely. I've heard of Bart Star, but never R Star. Brought back memories of that great quarterback in NFL history. But what about that speech tomorrow? Might there be some surprises when Fed Chairman Jerome Powell addresses his fellow central bank team there? And what's going to happen tomorrow?
Well, you know, he was talking, Frank, about leftover distortions from the pandemic on supply and demand. Last time he was addressing the world. That was July 26th. Today, Boston Federal Reserve President Susan Collins, who's joining him for the Jackson Hole Conference tomorrow, she said that the central bank may hike interest rates further, and she indicated that the Fed needs to keep these rates elevated for an extended period, even if it does decide against another increase in the coming months. And she's saying that inflation really sits at over 4% if you strip out the volatile food and energy prices. That's where inflation is. That's double the central bank's inflation target of 2%. I think that's part of what spooked the market today. So in my view, whenever you get these soft markets, it's a good time to be a buyer. It's like going to Nordstrom's. You know, if you mentioned the earnings at Nordstrom's, well, people that go there like to wait for the sales. Same is true for the financial markets.
That's a very good point. We're on the air live with Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management. And speaking of the retailers, this retail theft issue or shrinkage, as it's euphemistically called in the retail industry, and of course these mob smash and grabs, which are getting so much attention. I'll be talking about the legal aspect of all this with the Honorable Steve Cooley, the former Los Angeles County District Attorney, about this later this hour. But from an investment standpoint and from a business standpoint and from an inflation standpoint, too, it's obviously impacting companies in a very, very big way here now. Executives at Dick's Sporting Goods said this week that the level of shrink had surprised them. Dollar Tree also said that shrink hit its margin. So we're seeing this retail theft in all categories here.
Well, that's right. It's a huge problem, and it keeps buyers away. The Conference Board compiles something called the Index of Leading Economic Indicators that most of your listeners would be familiar with. And this Leading Economic Indicators index peaked at a record high in December of 2021. And now it's down 10.2% since then, and it's still declining. Now, by the way, the LEI, or the Leading Economic Indicators Index, has correctly signaled the last 8 recessions with an average lead time of 12 months. And what's interesting with regard to retailers and crime, 5 of the 10 components in this index are related to the goods economy or retailing, and it tends to be more cyclical than the services economy. So, this is a real problem.
All right. Would you be placing any bets in the retail sector here at the moment?
I would. I think I'd be a careful buyer. These problems will be solved. We've got a new election year coming up. We're facing that presidential election cycle, which puts a lot of pressure on the incumbents. This is where the third and fourth year of a 4-year term have to be positive for the markets, have to be positive psychologically for incumbents to get a second term. And the bear case for President Biden is that the stimulus money and the pandemic effects have just delayed the inevitable downturn that was supposed to have occurred in the second year. And that hasn't, it wasn't really a severe downturn at all. And so we may have a very interesting 2024.
That's for sure. I remember we were on the air the morning following the election of President Trump, which, by the way, and the whole election played out in 2016 was the least likely of scenarios that MarketWatch had laid out in its article that preceded the election, but it happened, and President Trump was elected. And I remember speaking to you about the historical significance from a market standpoint. What does history tell us here? This at this point in this administration, for example, is history any guide here, and what might be ahead as we get into the election year?
Well, it's interesting. We've had some pressure from the Federal Trade Commission, which is, I believe, the Biden appointment, and the Federal Trade Commission it just keeps trying to rein in tech industry giants like Amazon, Meta, former Facebook, and Microsoft. They've been in the FTC's crosshairs, and the FTC has brought cases against each of them.
It's time for kickoff, and the Believe podcast will get you ready for the new season.
How do you live through this as a Detroit sports fan?
Believe has podcasts covering all 32 professional teams and many of your favorite college teams, too.
You solidified your defense. You got better.
Sideline to sideline, end zone to end zone.
If you don't do those things, then you're not even trying your hardest to win at football, and I don't know what we're doing.
There was a lot of great players on those teams that I was fortunate to be part of.
Search BLEAV podcasts wherever you listen.
Moms are amazing at tracking down hard-to-find items. Library books, socks, you name it. But sometimes help is welcomed. Care.com makes it easy to find babysitters near you. Sitters with the experience and skills your family needs, like after-school pickup and homework help. You just post a job for qualified sitters to apply. And since all Care.com caregivers are background checked, you can feel confident about interviewing and hiring. To get the child care help you need, sign up now at Care.com.
Which, in the case of, I mean, you could argue that consumers buy what they buy because it's favorable to them. But so you wonder, is artificial intelligence next? Another area where the current administration has shown a lot of prejudice, let's say, would be the major traditional energy producers, U.S. oil and gas producers. Not that we shouldn't get off, greenhouse. We should get off of these kinds of traditional energy sources, but we can't just do it overnight. But these oil and gas companies spent more money on payouts to shareholders last year than they did on exploration and development. This according to the auditors Ernst & Young. So they reduced capital spending at the same time, and they're rewarding shareholders. People usually vote with their money. We'll see what happens.
Certainly, and of course, with all this political uncertainty and this unprecedented legal situation in the mix as well, that's certainly starting to rattle some nerves, don't you think? At least what among the movers and shakers you talk to, how's this political environment shaping up for the markets?
Well, we're seeing a lot of labor disruptions, Frank. The numbers of workers walking off the job actually is steadily declining. But we saw what happened with UPS. They settled at much higher wages and benefits. Well, that's all good. But now the United Auto Workers, mid-September, we'll see how that goes. There's 150,000 auto workers that may go on strike in the next couple of weeks. Interestingly, after World War II, 4 million workers went on strike every year. And that's when the unions were very strong. Now, as a percentage of the total, labor force, it's far, far fewer strikes that occur because the open market dictates rates so effectively, oftentimes, not always.
All right. At this point, Gabriel Wisdom, where are you putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, Frank, I mentioned some bargain hunting in all the sectors that have been soft. I like the media shares. I think over the long run they win as an alternative to crypto. I like MasterCard and Visa, been adding to those positions. And then the oil and gas producers, I think they're just too cheap, and they'll continue to reward shareholders as an exchange-traded fund that I like. XLE is the symbol. Capital spending by the oil and gas industry, I think we're going to see cuts, but I think we're going to see shareholders rewarded.
All right, and where do you see bond yields go from here, and how is this going to continue to impact real estate and consumer and business borrowing?
Well, it's got to hurt real estate. That the problem with this yield curve that's inverted, where you have much higher short-term interest rates and much lower long-term interest rates, is that it's the banks that suffer because the banks pay higher rates to attract depositors, and then they lend out at the lower rates, and rates go up, and they get stuck. That's why 3 major banks failed this year, and now 10 more are on credit watch. The S&P Global Group downgraded its bond ratings for several U.S. major regional banks, and that followed the Moody's downgrading of 10 big groups down to AA minus. So this revert or inverted yield curve indicates that we're well overdue for a recession, and I wouldn't bet against it in the next 6 months.
All right, Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for that thorough assessment here this evening. We always appreciate it. That is Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management, based here in Southern California, and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Wish you a wonderful evening, Gabriel, and thank you very much for taking the call.
Thank you, Frank.
Looking for legal help you can trust? Look no further than attorney Clark Fielding and the Fielding Law Team, your go-to destination for top-notch personal injury legal representation. Fielding Law understands that life can take unexpected turns, and you need a strong legal team to stand by your side. Now, if you've been injured in an accident that was not your fault and need help with a personal injury claim to obtain justice, Fielding Law is here to fight for you. Accidents happen, but you don't have to face the aftermath alone. Fielding's Law experienced attorneys are here to guide you through the legal process and ensure you get the compensation you deserve. Medical bills piling up, lost wages due to injury? Don't worry. Fielding Law specializes in personal injury cases and works tirelessly to recover your losses so you can focus on healing. The Fielding Law team has a proven record of success. They've helped countless clients secure fair settlements and win in court. You can trust Fielding Law to provide you with the best legal representation possible. If Fielding Law takes your case, Clark Fielding and his team of sharks will personally work with you, fighting hard for you to receive all the compensation the law allows. Call Fielding Law for a free case evaluation. It costs you nothing to get that honest opinion. And do what I did, put Clark Fielding's number in your phone under the word accident. Hit it when you need it, 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. 790 KBC stocks pulling back ahead of the big speech tomorrow from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 374 points, settling at 34,099. The S&P 500 down 60 at 4,376, and the Nasdaq gave back 257 points, settling at 13,464, snapping a three-day winning streak for the Nasdaq. NVIDIA seeing a wild ride. The AI giant popped after its earnings news came out after the closing bell yesterday, but shares ended with a gain of just 0.1% at around 471 and change after moving above 502 in early action. And some of the other big tech names saw gains early, but then pulled back. Taking a look at the yield in the 10-year note, which is, of course, has been very much in the spotlight, hitting a 16-year high recently, sending mortgage rates to 20-year highs. We see the yield in the 10-year note now is at 4.24%. Taking a look at the price of oil, still hovering around $80 a barrel. Right now, just below $79 a barrel. The price of gold down $3.20 at $1,943.90 an ounce. Checking the cryptos now, we see a Bitcoin up about $100 at $26,115. Ethereum up about $10 now at $1,657. And let's bring up Dogecoin here now, hovering at 6 cents. Mottek on Money continues here on 790 KBC. The political dust settling following the first Republican primary presidential debate on the GOP side last night, which was presented by Fox News and heard live here on 790 KBC. And a legal drama playing out this evening with former President Trump turning himself in Georgia. The booking process has ended, and the former president heading out of Georgia this evening on his private plane. Let's discuss all this this evening with Republican National Committeeman from California, SHAWN Steele, joining us live here on Mottek on Money on 790 KBC. Thank you so much for taking the call here. And first of all, your reaction to what's happening with President Trump this evening.
Well, right now I'm in the belly of the beast in Milwaukee, where we're likely to see Trump next year. We're at the convention city. The RNC has its annual meeting at least 1 year before the national convention, so we can get an idea what the arrangements look like. And all the candidates are here, except, of course, Donald Trump. And, you know, this is such a self-fulfilling legacy. We see that President Biden is using his Justice Department and affiliates to try to knock out a political opponent. And using laws that have never been used before for this purpose. And so it's a shameful experience for all Americans to have to experience. And at the same time, the beauty is it's really helping Trump. You know, so maybe that's what Biden wants. Biden wants, make Trump really popular in the primary. Republicans nominate him, and then he thinks he's going to be able to defeat him. But there's so many variables, and that's really bad thinking. First of all, it sets a terrible precedent. You don't think some Republicans are not wanting to do this themselves when it's their turn and take down the entire Biden crime family? There's a lot of people, at least 50% of the country, that really want that. So Biden has created a firestorm that's not going to go away. This is going to burn for decades.
What's the buzz there? Do you think President Trump will face any of these trials before the election?
You know, that's hard to tell. That's a good lawyer's question. You know, there's normally in a very high, complicated criminal case anywhere in America, it always takes forever. Kind of drives you crazy. You got a guy that committed a robbery and murder, and it seems like 2 or 3 years later they finally get a trial. This is a political trial. It's a political crime, which in itself should never be, facing the criminal justice system. I'm going to have to guess that this is going to be appealed on multiple levels, reaching the Supreme Court on probably all 4 of these cases. I can't see how any of these trials are going to take place before November of 2024. Just too late in the game. They should have done this. If they were going to do it, on January 20th, 2021. They should have started doing it right away, not waited all this time.
On there live with Shawn Steele, and let me ask you this: coming day now after the big first Republican primary presidential debate last night, what's the mood there, and what were some big takeaways?
It's pretty exciting. I'm sitting at the same table with a young woman from Atlanta, Georgia. Her name is Micah Carey, and she just switched from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party, and she represents the inner city part of Atlanta, Georgia. And her big issue, since she's African-American, her big issue is school choice. She realizes that people, and she's been supporting school choice as a Democrat for the last 2 election cycles, but the unions are too strong. The unions are all about pensions and payoffs, nothing about the kids. And so we have a brave person that joined us, and it's an honor to have her at my table, that really understands what is going on in the cities. And the cities, of course, are extraordinarily dangerous, sad, crime-ridden. And to have a brave woman like this who's elected to the state legislature to flip and join the Republican Party takes a great deal of courage. And, we love and we want to embrace that. It's palpable. It's exciting. It's optimistic. The odds are very good we're going to capture the Senate. We're going to grow in the House. The question is, are we going to get the presidency? And if we do, this is going to be historic changes for America for the better. We see school choice on the rise everywhere in half the country. It'll grow exponentially after that. We see the folks really want to have a lot more participation in their schools and have a lot less sinister behind-the-scenes developments. We're seeing that folks are just being taxed way out of order, regulated and spied upon. That's what Richmond, north of Richmond, is about. No, there's a constellation of good things happening, and coalitions growing. I've seen more African Americans and Latinos and Asians at this meeting than I've ever seen before. The party is literally changing.
A lot of discussion about how this presidential race is shaping up, and comparisons, I believe, were mentioned again last evening during that debate to the 1980 presidential race, where President Reagan defeated incumbent President Carter back then. And President Carter back then also had faced Democratic opposition from Senator Ted Kennedy. Biden facing opposition from RFK Jr. this time around. And then we had the Mariel boat lift, by the way, back in 1980, and then this tremendous immigration influx in recent years under President Biden. How do you see the race ultimately shaping up here?
Well, I love your parallels. I completely forgot about Mariel, and you're right. That was like a drop in the bucket to the 7 million people that have gotten to America illegally in the last 3.5 years. I mean, the numbers are staggering. There's never been that kind of a mass movement on this planet Earth at any time, and Biden has opened the doors aggressively. And every day, his Department of Human Services are finding new and creative ways to keep the doors open, letting everybody. And we're not talking about poor Mexicans. That's hardly a number anymore. We're talking about people from 100 different countries all over the world, that mostly young men that have acquired thousands of dollars to pay the cartels so they can get into the country. You can't get in. You can't get through the border without going through a cartel. So Biden's also provided a mechanism for funding cartels to the billions of dollars. And a lot of people get hurt, raped, killed on that journey by the cartels. It's an unbelievable, elongated human tragedy. Well, a lot of Americans fret about that, think about it, and deal with that. A couple of things. One, is Biden really going to be the candidate next year? I think it's a 50-50 shot. I don't think he makes it, personally. I don't think he's got the gas, and he can hold up that well. So the Democrats may be facing a catastrophic problem on their end. They're doing everything they can to prop up Joe. But every time you see him publicly, it doesn't look too good. Trump, I don't know. He may be the strongest guy in the world, or he may not. We'll see. He's in treacherous water that was created by the Justice Department for really a non-crime because he had opinions that he didn't like the way the election went. And then you've got this bright group of interesting candidates for president. The most successful governor in America, Ron DeSantis, he gets things done, not just talking about it, but he actually knows how to bend bureaucracy. Vivek Ramaswamy, now I'm learning how to pronounce his name, is speaking right now next door to me here in Milwaukee. He electrifies the crowd. He's the youngest person who's ever run as a Republican candidate for president in American history. And, you know, he's a second-generation immigrant. He's an entrepreneur. He loves this country, and he's riveting to listen to. He's got a huge following among Generation Zers. That's what our party needs. And then we have a great group of, Tim Scott of South Carolina. He's very, very Reagan-esque. We got to see them all. Americans got to see them last night. Any one of these people, any one of these folks would be great presidents. What a feast of abundance.
Well, I'll let you get back to that speech. And I know he mentioned, as did the others, mostly reversing Bidenomics, and certainly a lot to unpack on the economic front as well. And it looks like they'll all be coming to California next time around. So hopefully we'll be in touch with you then for the next big debate at the wonderful President Reagan Library in Simi Valley. So we look forward to that event and look forward to staying in touch with you.
Not only that, the California Republican Party is going to have 4 of the candidates, including Trump, October 1st. You don't want to miss that. That's in Anaheim at the Marriott, and everybody's welcome. There's no cost to go to a convention. There's going to be some, private dinners and all that are very, that are expensive. But basically, any Republican, conservative, libertarian activist who loves America is welcome to come down to the California Republican Party annual convention, and that'll be fun. So they'll be there. We'll have, of course, the big debate at the Reagan Library. Yeah, California is exciting.
Wonderful. Thanks for breaking that news for us here and for joining us here this evening. That is Republican National Committee committeeman from California, Shawn Steele, live with us here tonight on Mottek on Money on 790 KBC. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KBC. Good evening. Lots of big retailers talking about theft and how it's hurting their bottom lines. We heard today from the CEO of Nordstrom on the retailer's earnings conference call today, referring to the recent mob attack of a store in the Topanga Canyon area here in the San Fernando Valley, in which about 30 to 50 people participated in a heist this month, armed with bear spray and taking off in cars with without license plates, according to the LAPD. The head of Nordstrom says the loss is a concern. Losses from theft are at historical highs. We find it unacceptable, and it needs to be addressed. Recently, a task force was formed by the LAPD and other law enforcement agencies, including the Federal Marshal Service and FBI. And today they announced 11 arrests in connection with some of recent cases involving smash and grabs, 4 cases involving the Versace store at the Beverly Center, for example, the Warehouse Shoe Store in Highland Park, Nordstrom's at Topanga Mall in Canoga Park, and the Yves Saint Laurent store that was hit at the Americana at Brand in Glendale. Now, will these people ultimately go to jail? Let's get some reaction now and discuss what's happening with the Honorable Steve Cooley, the former Los Angeles County District Attorney, joining me live here right now. Steve Cooley, thank you very much for taking the call. Give us your reaction to the latest news here, first of all.
Well, in terms of the mob robberies, they're not thefts, they're robberies. I think that it's good that they're forming a task force. Let law enforcement use all of their tools and their skills to identify these individuals, and then let us hope and pray that maybe a prosecutor will emerge, will actually put people in prison by charging them with the correct offenses. I'm not so sure part 2 is going to happen, but I do have faith in law enforcement that when they turn themselves and their attention to something like this, they will make inroads, they will make arrests, but these people have to go to prison. That's simple.
Is that happening now?
Not really. George Gascon will not charge any juvenile with robbery, period. He won't do it. Even though they commit an armed robbery, he will not charge them with robbery. He does not charge enhancements that would increase the potential sentence. For example, robbery with a gun, he will not, in almost all circumstances, charge the gun enhancement. So you got an individual who is not charging according to the law. The sentences end up being a lot less because judges can't sentence anyone for an offense they are not charged with. So no, he's not doing it, and that's the weak link in the system, a terribly weak link. George Gascon.
Essentially, not doing his job. Then
that's a good way to summarize it. Complete failure. He's a dangerous man. He's dangerous.
At this point, I know you spearheaded the recall effort. Is that still alive at this point?
It's very much alive. It's in the courts. We hope to have a trial soon. The Register Recorder has conceded several months ago that the voter rolls upon which he calculated the number of signatures needed were bloated by at least 230,000. That reduced the number of signatures required by 23,000, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of other errors were made by registrar recorder workers and by invalidating perfectly legal signatures by county voters. The registrar recorder's office, when this is all done and said and done, will be embarrassed. And I hope this will bring some changes, maybe some personnel changes over there, so they will do their job instead of forcing good people to spend good money to have the right thing done at the end of the day.
Given the crisis that we've seen here with almost every single day now, these horrific videos of smash and grabs and horrified shoppers watching all of this, do you think some dramatic action needs to be taken here? It was mentioned last night by the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who said that he replaced a couple of DAs that were he felt not doing their jobs and brought in different prosecutors when a similar situation arose there.
Well, in Florida, under Florida law, the governor has the power to remove a county prosecutor, or whatever they call them back there. That power does not exist under California law. As far as I know, the only way we can get rid of someone like George Gascon is the recall. That was done in San Francisco. It'll probably be done in Alameda County, and God willing, it'll be done here in Los Angeles County. The recall is our way to get rid of him. If that doesn't work, then we'll vote him out of office.
On the Air Live with the Honorable Steve Cooley, and certainly having held that position, did you ever think we'd get to this point and see the rampant crime that we're facing here at the moment?
No. When I was the DA, crime was at a 60-year low. The system was working. Deputy DAs were totally enthusiastic about doing their duty. Judges did their job, and the right people went to prison for the right amount of time. That's how you get to a 60-year low, which is what we had in the mid-2000s. Right now, this very aggravated criminal activity is something I would have never imagined. But then again, I would have never imagined we'd ever have a district attorney like George Gascon who just fails to do his duty.
And it's extremely heartbreaking. And what advice do you have for business people who are watching their stuff walk right out the store?
Well, yeah. How about the frightened citizens who go off to their retail store to browse around and maybe pick something out and select something? People enjoy that. They enjoy the company. They enjoy shopping. But they don't enjoy seeing a security guard get sprayed with their spray, and then the really frightening activities of these smash and grab robbers stealing things, knocking things down. Someone's really going to get hurt, and we need to deal with this very, very forcefully, like we have historically dealt with other serious, threatening criminal activity.
The Honorable Steve Cooley, thank you very much for coming to the line, and look forward to staying in touch with you as we continue to cover this big story here. The Honorable Steve Cooley, the former Los Angeles County District Attorney, live with us here tonight on Mottek on Money on 790 KABC. I'll be back again tomorrow evening in the 5 o'clock hour. You can also bring up the Mottek on Money podcast on demand at KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. This is Mottek on Money on 790 KABC.
What does it mean to be fit? Is it about how much you and your crew can bench press? Or how many nutrients you crush in that post-workout meal? If you're fueling up with beef, you're getting gains. From protein, iron, and B vitamins, an unparalleled nutrient mix, satiating you in all the right ways. So after your next workout, grab your friends and grab some beef. Together, we bring more. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Funded by beef farmers and ranchers.